Welcome to Zeros and Ones, podcast about philosophy, ancient wisdom, and the meaning of life. Here is your host, Becka Thompson. Okay, hey, how's it going? Good morning, everyone. I don't know if this morning where you are. It's a beautiful morning where I am. And I have, as if you're new here, hi, my name is Becka. I am going through aspects of chapters right now, just of a book that I've written on philosophy called One, the Biography of All Things. I am a mathematician by background and a teacher, and among other things. And that's where we got, and all these things lead to the madness of philosophy. And I'm set to talk about today about music, which is the next thing of our foundational set of 8. If you remember, we're going through sets. Excuse me, you're gonna get my crinky chair. It's like old school here. Sets of what I'm calling basically the foundational instructional, like old Latin instruction, right? Sets of 8. It's actually 7. The quadrivium, which are the sciences, considered the sciences, and then also rhetoric, ethics, and now I'm blanking on the last one, but it's on our list, and I added one, and I actually don't remember which one I added now, or what the list was, or how do you do, but here we are in music. But before we talked about that today, I something on my heart this morning, which normally was not church o'clock, it's Sunday morning. I wanted to talk about something that is really challenging for most people, and it just came to me. So we're going to take a little moment to talk about that before we move on to music, and that is the concept and the action and the doing of forgiveness, and what that means. And like most things, I think that these things are deeply personal. How we define, just the other day, I asked someone, how to define God, like define God for yourself, right? We take these cultural ideas of what you mean, and people will say things all the time, like, I don't believe in God, or, oh, well, God is everything, right? But what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that, right? And it is a deeply personal thing, and then when you are forced to answer that, right? A lot of people will say, oh, well, the God of the New Testament, or the God of the Old Testament, or the God of the Quran, or or they'll say, well, I don't believe in God. Okay, well, what's the thing you don't believe in, right? It's a very personal question. And you ask people, what is love? And a lot of people might quote the Apostle Paul, love is patient, love is kind. And that's usually where I fall. Because I think sometimes people mistake control for love. They mistake manipulation for love. They mistake pain or fear, or safety for love. They mix up sexual attraction for love. And the discovery of what those things mean is quite the process. And then there's this other word. And this is the one that I wanted to talk about this morning. And that word is forgiveness. And the idea is forgiveness. Now, some people say, forgive and forget, right? Forgive and forget. Forgive and move on. I think that a lot of people might have that posture, but I think maybe we need to acknowledge the body keeps the score. So sometimes you can, in your mind, forgive someone, whatever that means, right? We haven't defined it yet. But your body doesn't, like, you're deep down, right? I'm going to say I forgive you, or I'm going to tell people I forgive you because I want to be seen as virtuous. I want to be seen as a forgiving person. But everything in my body is like, still like, fuck you. Right? We want to be able to claim we're capable of doing this, but doing it is, again, deeply personal. And only we know if we really have. And only we know if we're really successful. I like to think of, I was talking with somebody about Well, I'm just gonna draw a picture for you. Okay, do you know what a Venn diagram is? I mean, I'm a math teacher, so hopefully you know what Venn diagrams are. But if you don't, it's like one of the simplest pictographs to understand a concept. And yes, we've got my reflection everywhere. Who cares? So there's actually something cool called Ikagi, which is whatever. But a Venn diagram is like this. We're gonna do of three. Okay, this is an idea, and this is an idea, and this is an idea. Right? You've got ideas A, B, and C. Excuse me. Now, mathematically, you might say B is the number 3, right? And A is polynomials, and C is polygons. So here you'd have like a triangle, because something that both has a number 3 and is a polygon is a triangle. Here you'd have a cubic, right? A number 3, right? Or you might say. But what I was talking to somebody the other day is that what if A, B, and C are people with trauma, with their own trauma? Now, healing is dealing with yours, but you can only deal with yours, right? You only have the power to deal with yours. So let's say that you've got a married couple, right, with a lot of overlap trauma, and then like a friend who's mostly fine, but they've got a little like, I know you both, I care about you both, so they can ignore this because it's a sliver. It's not that big of a deal, right? You've got the same married couple with a lot of overlap trauma, right? And you've got a total stranger. The total stranger's out here. They're not affected by these people in their dynamic, right? They're not. Total stranger. This person here, if this is ABC, right? Ann, Bill, and Clyde, right? C doesn't care if Ann and Bill get divorced or keep together. They don't necessarily care, right? Now, if you have ABC up here where they're all interacted, right? Oftentimes this would be mom, dad, child, right? Mom's bringing her past trauma to the table. Dad's bringing his past trauma to the table, and child is affected by both. And what's deeply painful is that child actually starts in here, right? And they gravitate out, like of the Venn diagram of emotional connection, right? And a lot of children adult children, right, will live in this area, but they still have these overlaps of their trauma with their parents. And I'm using parents and children. It could be anything, but I'm just wanting to give you an idea, and I want it to be 3 because I think that's important. For my thinking is forgiveness takes you not only out of the equation, right? Now you're down here, but you're actually out of the plane. It's math, right? We talk about math. So this is a flat 2-dimensional shape. Forgiveness actually just, you're up above where you can see the people who are still in their trauma and maybe offer help or just see them see them for who they are, right? And how they were hurt, right? And I would argue, this is so high tech, that as a collective society, we look like layers and layers of bubble wrap, but we're all interacted. So as a society, it's like, and we've got this, and then it becomes a chaos monster of our own Venn diagram cycles of trauma. Sorry, that's just what I've learned and as I've lived through. You can disagree with me, and I'm happy to debate it with you, but all evidence points toward that. So what is forgiveness, right? Well, I'll just be plain. I've studied it a lot in the last decade of my life because I felt like I had to. There's a level of things that you hope to be forgiven for. Not that you're like an abuser, but acknowledging where your actions hurt somebody else or your actions actually like really fundamentally changed somebody else's existence, right? And another, and I think honestly the harder one, is to forgive. So when we are this cluster of circles, I actually believe, to a degree, and we're talking about this when we talk about biology, that we are actually cells of a larger host. Okay, and I mean this metaphorically and to a degree actually, which we're going to talk about. We've talked already about the spiral of your heart. That we actually like sit in this own toroidal field of that starts with your heart. And if you've watched any other things, we're talking about science because it's the biography of all things. That energetically and the spiral, we're going to talk about this today a lot with music. Inspiration. That's where that word comes from, and it's about this the movement of you, right? But as we overlap, right, when you can forgive, it's not right away, at least for my discovery, you can start to rise out. For myself, when I have forgiven in my heart a situation where, let's say, both people have done hurtful things, right? We're back to our married couple, right? Let's go over here. My big fancy picture of the two circles, right? This is our Venn diagram, and this is where people overlap with their trauma, right? As opposed to, say, a healthy marriage or a healthy connection would just be like this actually it becomes cellular, right? Where your model, like this would be a healthy model. You're choosing to be connected without the overlap of your trauma. But in this Venn diagram, right? So let's say you're in this dynamic with somebody and you both hurt each other. You can choose to forgive, but they're still going to remind you of this, let's say, right? Or maybe you're the one reminding and they're trying to forgive. I don't know, but like it happens, right? Because if I have extricated myself and acknowledged that this still exists, but have left it, right? Let's say, literally, you cut this off, here's A, here's B, and this person, B, chooses to forgive. They're a different circle. They're tinier over here, tinier to start, although we all can grow. I know this might sound very rudimentary, but this is what's on my heart today. And this is coming to me to say this. And you can still grow as your emotional circle, your person circle. This person over here, though, they still own this part of the blackened overlap of what you guys used to be. And they're going to want to remind you of that, right? And choosing to now people in that environment where they feel like the person that they were once with or were once entangled with, now they're trying to remind you, right? All the time of whatever, right? And a lot of people at that point choose to be like, I'm out, right? Because this person now fundamentally has this dark space meant in negativity toward you, right? Or their perception of you. And just to be clear, as we're 14 minutes into me talking about this, I've been both of these people at different points in my life. And I would argue all of us have. All of us have. There are times when you still want to be connected. So you want to test if you can bait them back into a fight. Or you get baited back into a fight, right? There are times when you release and you feel really good about it, but you can tell the other person's still hurt. You don't know how to separate, so you usually just are like, bye-bye, right? Because that's your way to heal. That's early healing, is you take your part that's left, you acknowledge what happened, and you go and you can move and heal. That's necessary, right? And then sometimes you try to, to me, the ultimate idea of forgiveness is restoration. And you can try to go back, but if this person still sees your overlap, I would argue that true forgiveness of both people is that eventually this becomes not cloudy anymore, right? You separate, they got rid of their black and they separate, and now you can just be connected like the two, like in a bond, like a literal bond of molecules. Yes, I know you might think I'm crazy, but I'm serious. This is why we live in such disharmony. We humanity are like a cancer on the earth. And I don't mean that like to be into any political ideology of anything, the environment, although I believe that the more we get in harmony with each other, the more the rest of the world will, but that is the goal, to be in like a true, like a bond, like water, like H2O, right? But each of us has to acknowledge our part in every relationship that we have, right? And most relationships are balanced, friendly, right? They're just friend, we choose to be connected, right? These are friends. These are romantic partners and or parent-child and or certain things that it laps over, right? We choose to be friends, right? How to make two lovers from friends. Sorry, my voice is a little... But like this starts to gravitate to this and codependence, right? And then this can lead to the blackening of hardship. And I think this comes again, like from your definition of love, from your definition of God. And then when problems arise, how do you forgive? What is forgiveness? Everybody has to figure this out for themselves. That's the hardest thing. I've said this to people before about church and about religion. I said, it honestly, and I believe this deeply, it's a beautiful thing because it teaches, it's like step one of you understanding life. And it gives you a very clear litmus for how to maybe find steps 2 and 3. But eventually, you have to journey alone. Every piece of every type of literature and all throughout the Bible, that is the point. You have to journey alone. And healing is alone. Healing is an alone thing. And the reason why this is coming to me is because I had a big group interaction last night with people I've known most of my life, since elementary school. People call it a reunion. And I had some really great conversations with people that I dated over the years, because, you went to like high school together, right? And there were particular individuals that mean so much to me. And some of them have gotten to a place with me where we dated and it didn't work out, or it wasn't the right time or whatever, and we are fine with whatever, right? Others, like, they're still not okay, right? And I'm not entirely sure why, because it's been several years. But that is what came to me this morning, because healing can only be done alone. But trauma needs a buddy. And that is so hard. Because when you're alone and you're in trauma, a lot of people want to end everything, right? It goes back to Hamlet. I was watching, I don't know, I'm not trying to invoke his name to be like a usurper or anything, but Chris Olsen is on TikTok. I really like him. And I saw a thing of his this morning. He was talking about how when he's upset, he just has this overwhelming feeling of, I want to go home. And he was describing it as his childhood home. And I will tell you, the night that I almost, the most desperate night of my life, we'll leave it at that. Many years ago now, but that was the prevailing thought. I just want to go home. And it wasn't necessarily my childhood home, although it was my childhood home. It was larger than that. And I'm very grateful for that moment, because that moment helped me start on a path to put together all these things I've ever lived through and ever learned, and putting it together in a very profound way. So I'm incredibly grateful, as awful as that moment was, as awful for that time was. I'm very grateful for it. But what Chris Olsen said resonates with me, and I just wanted to echo that, because I think it's, at the time, I felt alone Like, I was literally driving in my car, sobbing, yelling out to God, my definition of God, right? Like, I just want to go home. I'm just tired. I'm just tired of all of this, right? I'm just tired. It's so much work to be a human being. But the thing is, it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. You can find the peace that passes understanding. And you'll have moments along the way of like what I'm trying to describe in my Venn diagram. Because I think we're all feeling people who want to be viewed as good and kind, not just to those around us, but to everybody. I really believe that people isolate when they don't feel like that's how they're being perceived. And then it takes a very healed person to go out into the world and recognize that other people's perception of you has very little to do with you. It has to do with their own overlap of trauma. And again, remember, these two people, if we're saying husband and wife or a romantic relationship, they've got their parents, they've got their siblings, they've got their stories, and we carry that with us. Other people have said this better over decades and centuries, in stories and lore and esoteric wisdom. I mean, this is the ring in the Lord of the Rings, right? The ring of power that can corrupt you, and that love can be subverted. So I'm erasing this for no reason. So that was on my heart this morning. And I think that for me personally, I view that like when mutual forgiveness is successful is when you can have restoration. And some people will never get there, but you always can do you. Always, forevermore. I'm very quiet or something. So that's just what was on my heart this morning when I woke up. And I was like, I got to record a podcast. And I've got these guests that I'm trying to do, but I'm still trying to get through my book, which is just me. So I want to talk about music. I want to talk about everything. But the whole point of the book, the biography of all things, is to recognize that how we navigate the world. It's like, it's what I'm trying to share is to empower everybody of what we are, what this world actually is, so that we can see each other with love and kindness and compassion, and that we don't have to go around navigating in gossip and retaliation. I mean, like, retaliation is definitely like something that happens on repeat. Nobody really talks about it because to admit that you retaliate to somebody. But you can retaliate by gossip. You can retaliate by sharing something that maybe didn't need to be shared to a third party, right? To a mutual friend. Did I tell you what they did to me? Right? That's retaliation. It's a subversive retaliation, but it's still retaliation, right? You want to spread your side of the story. You want to spread your pain. The sad part is retaliation in those forms just echoes out into more and more trauma, because then people who didn't want to be a part of whatever it happens to be are now a part of it, right? And we search for that when we're in our trauma because we need allies. It's very challenging because you need allies to make you feel safe, and you need friends that have your back. I've said this to people before with certain aspects of the life that I've lived. I sometimes I'm like, I've got friends who have my back without question, right? And then I've got a lot of old friends who just are like, ooh, Becca, or they don't talk to me anymore because they took somebody else's side, right? So that it's that really needs you to have your ride or dies, right? But I've joked before. I'm like, it's not necessarily fair for them to just completely without question have my back to this other party. But I'm so grateful for that because we all need that when we're feeling low, right? When we're feeling lost. So this is more than I wanted to talk about that, but I just really felt compelled to talk about forgiveness because I think our world really needs it right now. Right now we see each other through a glass darkly, and one day we'll see each other face to face. And it doesn't matter who wins our elections. The prevailing thought in our world, the prevailing constant, it seems, in our world is that we don't see each other. And when we have an opportunity to maybe listen one side or the other, win or lose. We choose retaliation or gloating, which is also a form of retaliation. Gossip, cruelty, the othering of people. And that creates the disharmony, which is the perfect segue, disharmony, into our topic of the day, which is music. Okay? All right, I'm going to read something for you because we start everything with a quote, although we're already 25 minutes in. And this, I'm going to read this for you. This comes from a book. It's a book that I read as a child. You might recognize it, okay? Now I want to get my voice properly put together. Okay. In the darkness, something was happening at last. A voice had begun to sing. It was very far away, and Diggory found it hard to decide from what direction it was coming. Sometimes it seemed to come from all directions at once. Sometimes he almost thought it was coming out of the earth beneath them. Its lower notes were deep enough to be the voice of the earth itself, herself. There were no words. It was hardly a tune, but it was beyond comparison the most beautiful sound he had ever heard. It was so beautiful, he could hardly bear it. That's the quote. Does anyone know what that's from? It is C.S. Lewis from The Magician's Nephew, which is book 6 of the Chronicles of Narnia, of which there are 7. What C.S. Lewis is describing, Diggory and Polly, I believe it's Polly, it's been a few years since I've read these, had been at the forming of Narnia. So, in a different one of these, I said, in the Genesis, in the beginning, God said, "Let there be light." The entire world is encapsulated in that one phrase. And nobody understands it, it seems. And I'm really not trying to be arrogant of that, like, I figured it out. I'm 99% sure that I know what this is, and I learned it from books and I learned it from other people, and finally I was like, oh wow, that's what that means. Said. Okay? So, all music starts with your voice. All music starts with your voice. I love to sing. I love to laugh. Oh, 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 oh. Wild and clean. I don't remember the words. I love to laugh. Whoa, oh, oh, oh. Da, 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 da. Do you know the one from Mary Poppins? So my father was a doctor. I want to share you this anecdote. This is the beginning. And I asked him about, I said, once I was a child, he delivered babies. He was in family practice doc and did a lot of obstetrics. My sister does as well. I said, we were talking about it. I said, it's really sad that pretty much all humans come into the world crying, right? Which we'll get into that in a different topic. Talk about forgiveness. Like, it's a traumatizing thing to be born. But my dad said, and I'll never forget this clearly, he said that a crying baby is a very, very good thing because it means that the baby is healthy. And here's a loose quote of my dad, as I remember him telling it to me when I was younger. He said, if a baby is silent, that's when we know something's wrong. The birth canal squeezes fluid out of your lungs as you enter the world. That's why a vaginal birth is preferable to a cesarean section. That's why the first thing in a C-section you do is they're pulling out the mucus from the nose and the mouth. Okay, I'm interrupting my dad's loose quote. Crying is the body's natural response to taking in a breath for the first time. Crying babies are not upset so much as they are notifying the world that they are here. Now this is where my dad gets me, my father's daughter, right? Like, they are singing a song and proving to the world around them that they can breathe. We want babies to cry because crying means breathing. Crying means healthy. A silent baby is usually sick. Think about that for a second, about how powerful your voice is. And it all starts right in here. I suppose I should probably get one of my guitars off the wall, but I don't feel like pausing this. Let's hold on one second. Let's see if I can figure out how to pause this and come back. I'm really good at this. I've got a guitar. I've got a stringed guitar hanging there. I've got an electric guitar behind my door, behind me. Can you see it right there? And I've got a piano right here. So notes, string notes. So let's talk about the mechanics of the piano. And if I'm really wanting to be great at this, I'll use my handy dandy look at machine camera and take a photo and put it in the middle of this. But for now, we're just going to keep my setup because I've got to unplug something to go plug something else. We're not going to deal with it. So what's the mechanics of sound? So it starts with your own voice, right? Well, what is the mechanics of sound? Okay. So the strings of the guitar, the strings of the piano are from, in this case, wire, but it can be nylon, right? It could literally just be, it could be the string of my cord that connects, right? Different attributes. If you pulled it tight enough, and then you, right? And then you strum it or you flick it. What is happening? What is that? So the piano itself is percussive, but it's so a pluck, a strum, or a percuss, a bang. They all do what? What is the foundation of music? Vibration, okay? A vibration, and you can see it. So maybe you've heard that math and music are related, right? They are. And again, I should put in the photos of things and the pictures of strings, because it's actually ratios that create the different harmonic notes, ratios on that string. And then ratios of the density, we talked about density with physics, right? The density of the string toward a thicker radius wire, right? And there's a word that is escaping me now that physicists and music and electricians even use for when they're talking about the densities, and the thickness of the different wires. Some are wrapped together. Violin and cello have nylon strings, and they create the vibration through horsehair on the bow. It's horsehair, very tightly put horsehair. So you've got tightly pulled horsehair along a tightly pulled nylon, and then a human being can move their fingers around on the cello, and you hear the sound. That's that sound. What's music? Right? What an amusing thought. Where does music come from? Amuse. To be amused is to not muse. Okay? So think about this in our society. How much do we try to be amused? We go to a movie, film, right? Which actually, movies come from, that word comes from silent films, from photographs, because there were the stills and there were the movies. There were the stills and there were the movies. And movies were a series of photographs. But we become amused at a comedy show, at a movie, over a book from a TV, right? Well, muse is to not be mused, to not muse. What is to muse then? Well, have you heard of the Greek, the muses, right? The muses, historically in Greece, were the source of inspiration for creativity. Again, there's that word, inspire, spiral. They were the source of the creativity. They were the inspiration of the creativity, because we are creators. We are both creators and created. And wrapping your mind around that will take the entire from the breath of your birth to the breath of your death. But again, going back to that screaming baby, right? Your first breath, here I am, right? And how much, if you when you're in your body, this is for actors. I had a young woman reach out to me this week about an acting lesson of being able to cry on cue. And I said, well, it's more than that, right? First of all, you got to get in your body where the flow of emotions, where your emotional life and your emotional center can be created and then expressed in your face, in your body, right? That takes practice, like an athlete, right? Because you are your instrument. But that's the muse, that's the inspiration of who we are. When you get into this space, oftentimes it's uncomfortable. And I can't explain it to you unless you try to do it. If you get on so just wherever just sit on what are called your sit bones, colloquially. They're little nubs on the bottom of your pelvis that you're meant to sit on without your legs, that you can balance on and be tall. Okay? I'm going to shotgun this a little bit more. Because your body flows that way. And the thing about this is you're so real and you're so present when you're in that physical space. You can get lightheaded if you're not used to it. And one might start to realize, if you again look at children have almost perfect posture constantly because they haven't literally been burdened by the world telling them that their voice doesn't matter or their body's a mistake. And children take in the metadata of adults. I love my mother. So Mama says she'll probably be on here at some point. When I had some hardship in my life, I was telling her things that I was like, well, so like people said this, and my mother was just gobsmacked. Well, I never said that. I don't know where she was taking it that it was her. That was her overlap of the turf and trauma. But I was like, I'm not blaming you. But Mom, like there are a host of other voices I was hearing as a child, and it's only gotten louder for kids. It's only gotten louder. And it's so challenging. I think all the times in the ways that I've failed as a parent to protect my son, and yet what do you do because you're at school and the other kids have whatever. But so your body is like, it's best to like just sit like this all the time. But you'll notice I'm changing, so I'm closer to the mic. Maybe I just need to, sit the way I need to and pull the mic close to me, right? Like if you're watching or if you're listening at home. So music is about the muses. That's where the word comes from. The sounds come from strings, plucked strings. Now, if you were ever in band, rock stars have band, you learned about the brass, the woodwinds, the percussives, right? The stringed instruments. In band, you pretty much have the brass and the woodwinds, and then the percussion. I was a percussionist, and in addition to playing piano and all the stringed instruments. But piano is technically classified as percussive. Woodwinds are made of wood. They're hollowed out with holes, right? And the vibration happens on the reed. Again, it's always vibration. Now, if you played a brass instrument, or if you know brass, trumpets, tuba, trombone, right? French horn. Where did the buzzing come from? Your lips. Your lips. If you go to a symphony, this is why it's so beautiful about the symphony. You've not only got all these different instruments, which are focused air, if it's a versus a string. Focused air through holes vibrated by either a tiny little reed or a person's lips. And it creates beautiful symphonic music that now we just use as a backdrop to a film. Or we think we can digitally create something. Digital capture is just I mean, that's zeros and ones. That's what this podcast is called. I haven't had any coffee yet today. What the heck am I thinking? It's already almost even cold. But so what that like music is completely to do with math and physics, right? We've got the density of the strings. We've got the nature of the intensity of like percussion, for example. And I was a percussionist, right? In fact, if I'm remembering, the last one of these, I was banging on my table because I like to bang around sometimes, right? We learned on the timpani. The timpani also, by the way, is a tight drums, by the way. Especially there can be tuned drums. I know I was the one who tuned them. Sorry. They are tightly pulled. They started as animal skins, right? Tightly pulled. And so you create the vibration with a bang of a mallet. And you can know that I'll do it here. You can just hear a little, or, right? There's a difference. We know this. We can hear it. But it's also a difference of physics. So the whole point of all of this is one, the biography of all things. All things are one. The same thing. Which we're getting there. And if you listen to all these, if it's out of order, that's fine, I suppose, although I have a reason, there's a method to my madness. But yeah, so denser things vibrate at slower speeds, and we pick them up as a lower timbre. Less dense or less, they vibrate at a higher pitch, and we hear that in that timbre. And of course, you know that there are things that animals can hear. Can't. It's not that it doesn't exist. It's that our receptors can no longer pick it up, because we both have a creator of our music and a receptor of our music. And if you're just listening, I'm pointing to my voice box and my ears. These are real, right? My grandmother, and I have family members, I hope it doesn't happen to me, had something called hyperacusis, where everything was louder to her than everyone else because of the ways that her eardrums, so just your eardrum, there's a reason it's called a drum, because again, it's a membrane that picks up the vibrations, and the vibrations are coming through these tiny little bones in your ear that literally, it's like a wave crashing into a shoreline. That's happening in your ears is the wave, right? And you interpret that. It's fascinating. My gosh, you guys, you are fascinating. Just I have my own body, right? We each got one. It's like a freaking lottery ticket. You come down here to Earth and you're like, here's my body. Yeah, I mean, we get it back from our parents, from two humans who gave us this DNA, but it's ours. Right? It's like getting your locker on the first day of school if school lasts for the rest of your life. You get to decorate it. You could kick the door if you want to. Hopefully you don't. Hopefully you remember you can lock it, you can not lock it. Hopefully you remember your combination lock, right? But it's yours. It's no one else's. It's no one else's. And these are fascinating machines. Nothing will fascinate me more in life than my own body. And now that I know what it is. And it saddens me to such intense levels that we don't celebrate that. And I don't mean celebrate everybody's body. It doesn't matter if you're big or small or fit or I'm not talking about fat shaming or fitness guru stuff. I'm talking about your body, your ears, your throat, your voice box, your lungs, your digestive tract, which we'll talk about. Fascinating. The strings of your muscles, the density of your bones, that all these things work in a perfect, beautiful harmony if we learn how to get there. And we start that way. And there might be people who were born with problems, and for that I would want it, like, as society would say, oh, I'm sorry for that. Like, there's some no, I actually like believe that people there's like a different gift. And I don't want to get into that because I am not a person that has waded through that in life, so that's not my experience. Although I have had a lot of people I know, but our bodies are incredible, just incredible. So do you know I've written this in my notes because I see it from my book of, it's the Jeff Buckley version that goes in my brain, right? And David sang and it pleased the Lord, but you don't really care for music, do ya? Right? Goes like this: the fourth, the fifth, the minor chord, and the major lift. The baffled strings composing hallelujah. Right? Hallelujah. That word, by the way, we'll have to talk about that. That word actually evokes God, but we'll talk about that later. So David saying that please the Lord, the chords, right? But you don't really care for music, do you? David played and it pleased the Lord, the ancient chords. Okay, so here's now our next question. Why are some things pleasing to our ears and some are discordant? And this goes back to how everything picks up everything. Our bones are the receptors of our eardrums, our 3 tiny bones. But we have a bunch of other bones. They're picking stuff up too. You know this when a car busting their bass, right? It can rattle your house. It's because it's a vibration. And if you are around that constantly, by the way, you're actually damaging yourself on a cellular level. I mean, that's an editorial comment. It's not, but it's 100% true. I don't, this whole process isn't to try to elicit people to feel badly, but for you to know who you are. It's like Aragorn in The Lord of the Rings. Cast aside the ranger and become who you were born to be. I'm just trying to help you see who you are, because you're freaking awesome. But so some chords are not, they're discordant on purpose because they actually vibrate against things that our body, that is the, like I said, like is this inspiration, the spiral inside your body. Okay? So now the question comes back to why? Everything always leads back to why. Why is it that certain densities of certain strummed strings against the densities of some other strummed string, they can hit together and expand and create actual peace in your body, and others can hit and create such a discord that it makes us like sick? What do you think radiation therapy is in cancer? It radiates. It's the same idea, but on a different level on the electromagnetic spectrum. And this is to try to kill cancer, but of course, like, it kills a lot of stuff. We know that harmonics kill things. We know this. We base a lot of our practices in harmonics and healing on people with that. That's what that is. Have any of you ever heard of the 440 hertz controversy? Just planting that seed. So hertz. A hertz is a frequency. This is how then, so now that we know these things exist, of course we want to measure them because that's what humans do. That's what the essence of mathematics is, to measure everything against itself and each other. The meter there in it's the meter stick, the actual meter stick is held in France. You know, it's just It's literally, that's where we get the word metric. When we say, what is the metric we're using? We're saying, what is the balancing thing that we use to discuss this? Because words matter. So that's the actual meter stick, which has a definition. And its definition is from the North Pole to the equator. I believe the actual meter is what has been determined to be 1/1,000,000th. I have to look it up, the exact thing. But it's like, it is from that idea versus like a foot, which literally just used to mean somebody's foot. But so 440 hertz, well, you have to know what a hertz is. Hertz is a measure of frequency, and it is named after the experimenter who worked with it. Heinrich Hertz is his name, and I want to quote something of him because I think I like Heinrich Hertz. Let's. I'm bringing all the great thinkers along with me to try to make my claim. All right, here's what Hertz has to say. One cannot escape the feeling that these mathematical formulas have an independent existence and an intelligence all of their own, that they are wiser than we are, wiser even than their discoverers. Anything that's going to give a good word for math, I'm going to quote. So again, Hertz is about frequency, and frequency is mathematical in nature, as it is harmonic. Okay. And in this context, this is not a pejorative. Okay. We're not saying, whoa, you sure drink a lot of coffee with great frequency, right? No. Although we're talking about the mathematical measure that kids learn about sine, cosine, tangent. Those things are all, they're circular. Again, the biography of all things. I hope I get to that. I don't even remember if I put that in because I didn't want people to feel like they were drinking from the fire hose. But so let's think of like you just did some wash, right? Or you're at the beach and you've got a towel and you're going to flap it out to get it dry or get the sand off of it, right? Why do you do that? Why are you doing that with the towel? You think that it's going to get sand off of the towel, right? Why do you think that? Because you are creating a wave that is going to keep going into, and then the towel that you're holding on to remains in your hands, right? But the sand that is upon it is free to fly away. That's why we do that. We are creating a wave. We are participating in the physics of our world. So a hertz is how many times you would do that in a second. Well, 440 hertz is what your sheet would flap of middle A on the piano, which is the first note that gets tuned to. And if you didn't know this, you tune the piano with a tuning fork. Okay, you tune the piano with a tuning fork that measures at 440, which this is a controversy. And then you measure every other note off of middle A once you've tuned it. And then every other instrument is tuned off the piano. So this is why this is important. Because there's actually, again, with your heart, the inspiration and the physical of everything, that it turns out that 432 hertz or 432 vibrations per second is actually mathematical aid. That mathematically, that becomes the pitch with which everything harmonizes and is better for our bodies. I swear you can't make this up. That's true. You can look, if you're right now and you're available, go ahead and like Google search 440 hertz controversy. You'll find crazy stuff. And it's all real. And I swear you can't make this up. They're like, why did it go to 440 hertz? Because it goes back to this, it was this like 1930s uniformity that was brought up in 1936 Germany. Let's just leave it at that. Okay, so we're talking about frequency in music, and now I want to ask you, have you ever heard of the Schumann resonance? So the Schumann resonance is called by some the heartbeat of the earth. And it is basically the waves that are bouncing back from the Earth to the ionosphere and back again. And it's like sort of it's a human resonance. Insane. And these are vibrations that are everywhere all the time. And again, remember, some vibrations can be heard, some can be seen, light, and some can kill things, cancer and radiation. They're all on the same spectrum because everything is one. Okay, let's get back to music. We're getting a little, I get a little, So, music is like melody. I call melody is like the main character, and harmony is like the best friend. And dissonance is the archetypal bad guy enemy, okay? Just like in any good story, you need your protagonist, your antagonist, and your best friend. That is melody, harmony, and dissonance, okay? So why are we always rooting for the so-called good guys in music, the melody and the harmony, and not dissonance, okay? And it's because, and this, again, you can't make this up, because harmonies interact with our body that hits us on a molecular level that then can evoke emotions. And harmonies can bring up pleasing emotions and dissonance, negative ones. I didn't mean to, when I started this talking about forgiveness, I wasn't meaning to get into all this necessarily. It was just what was on my heart, but my gosh, like it fits. Before we go into how to prove this, I would argue, just go and listen to something. Bach, for example. Ave Maria is a great one because there's what I'm dubbing a mathematical certainty of the notes. Do you know Ave Maria? And then Ave Maria, right? There's a certainty of the tone difference. You can hear it. Versus, okay, forgive me, I love singing, and I love singing properly, but I'm going to sing improperly now. Ave Maria. That's not the melody, right? It's an attempt, perhaps, at hitting the notes, but there's like an actual mathematical certainty within the vibrations of your voice, the way that you breathe, and hitting the note. And that also evokes emotions. You can't make this up. It's true. And I know you know it. I know you know it. So singing and stringed instruments, it hits us the same way. So why do we universally find some classical things pleasing and others not? Why do things seem sinister with a minor tone and happy with a major tone? Why is it that people sometimes deride the 3-chord progression of rock music? The Beatles, Taylor Swift, Billy Joel are really, really incredible with the 3-chord progression. Why are they able to, those 3 artists that I mentioned, hit after hit after hit? And yes, it has to do with the lyric, which we're going to talk about lyrics later. But they almost unilaterally use a 3-chord progression. You can side by side songs 4 chords maximum. You can break the chord, do versus all at once, right? I can't sing. I can only sing one note at a time. I need other people to sing a chord. But a piano or a guitar can do them all at once because we have multiple strings, right? Why do those feel better? Why does Taylor Swift have hit after hit after hit? You know what? One of my new favorite ones is Black Dog from the Tortured Poets Department. And let's just, it just starts with a simple chord progression. And it's one she's used 1,000 times. But why does it still work? It's all up here. Ding, ding, ding. Ding, ding, ding. Right? And then when the song changes, it goes like that's the bass behind this growing. Okay, I can tell you the chords. I play them all the time on my piano. It's not rocket science. And putting it together it's literally like a formula. I'm sorry, this is no disrespect to Taylor Swift or the Beatles or Billy Joel. that they knew how to tap into this with lyric, which we're going to talk about lyric and emotion, but they know that these things cause emotion, and they know that the emotion links you to the person who evoked the emotion, the singer-songwriter. I was able to have this emotion in you link to these words that I wrote, and the link was made through this very clear mathematical, musical exposure. Now, again, no shade. The reason why people like Beethoven and Prokofiev have different things, like, old classical music, it's because they were beyond that, in their realm of, and they were experimenting with different things and different melodies in the same way. Dun, 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 dun. Bum, 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 bum. You don't want to end it there, do you? This is where music entangles with our brain, but like actually, because it does it for everybody. So this is why be careful with the noises that's around you. I was talking about astronomy and how we're dealing with massive light pollution. We also have extreme sound pollution. Extreme sound pollution. And I have a big problem with people driving down with their bass going so hard in their car, right? I do, because I say, you know what? You don't get to assault my person or my child's person or these children's person or my friend's person with that. You can keep it around you, but it's like smoking. It really is. It is almost more damaging because smoke can only get into us through our lungs. The vibrations of music can come in literally everywhere. And I hope you don't think I'm crazy. If this is the only clip you see, you'd be like, well, what is she smoking, right? Well, watch the whole thing. I've just proved it physically, and by physically I mean physics. Okay? So we're going to hang this up for now, but let's end with one more thing, okay? If you want to learn how to sing, by the way, we all have the same instrument. In fact, my instrument's damaged. I have vocal notes, which means if I get certain notes, my voice gets out of control. Like it wavers because of the note. It's whacking on the note. But your diaphragm, if you didn't know, it's the only muscle that doesn't control bones. It controls your breathing, right? So your diaphragm's here, it's right in the middle, and you breathe in, right? And if you sing out the top, this is called your head voice. If you sing out the top, this controls the pitch, your vocal cords. And we can sing, and we can sing. See, that gets harder on me. But that's all based on our actual instrumentation and use, right? Like the way an athlete, a football player who's been banging against people forever, they used their body, they got great stuff out of it, and then their body got a little banged up, right? That same thing can happen to your voice, obviously. So I hope the takeaway in this is music is incredible. And that we have resonators. So the resonators for your voice, resonators can come from back here. They can come in your neck. They can come in your head. You are your first and best musical instrument, and you can just speak in such a way as to make it a melody all the time. If I were part of a society that would accept me speaking this way all the time, and I didn't feel like I had to hurry, and I didn't feel as though I was going to be judged for taking my time and having a more melodic way in which I spoke, then I wouldn't speak like this. I would speak like that. So I use this as an example to, again, show you how society and culture crams us in. Ooh, and those of us who stretch out are often called crazy, right? Because conformity is the biggest thing that our culture tries to do. That's what I would call evil. You want to talk about good and evil? Okay, we're going to talk about that later. But like, that's what I would call evil. Evil is the disproportionate constraint on our creation. And remember, every healthy baby comes into the world screaming, alerting the world that they're here. And then slowly but surely, society and our Venn diagrams squish each other out. So this one is longer than I've ever done before because I had that beginning forgiveness part, and I hope that you listened to that, and I hope that it might have been compelling to you. I really appreciate anybody who listened this far. Maybe you were on a road trip. Maybe you're getting household chores done and you just decided to listen. Maybe I'm in the background as you're getting homework done. I don't know. I listen to podcasts in my car. I just listen to people. I listen to books on tape, and you take it in strides. So I've tried to keep these to 20 minutes usually because that's what, as a teacher, like I never would go beyond that, but I recognize that you guys can break this up. So I hope you have a lovely day, and just remember, all music starts with a deep breath. Have a beautiful day. Thank you for being here. Ta-ta! Thank you so much for listening to Zeros and Ones with Becka Thompson. Please subscribe and share.